Hi, everyone. I'm Toni Land, and welcome or welcome back to Unlocking Knowledge, where we are currently reading The Mandate for Leadership, The Conservative Promise, Project 2025. Now, this was written in 2023 by the Heritage Foundation. Now, for those of you who may be new, for those of who may need a little reminder, why are we embarking on this unlocking knowledge journey? And it goes back to my people being destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. And so we are intentionally stepping back from being spoon fed information that then shapes our opinions and our thoughts. And we are leaning in and getting information for ourselves, literally reading this book word for word, so that then we can step away and prayerfully seek God to shape and form our own thoughts and our own opinions. So, with that being said, I won't be sharing my thoughts or opinions either, as I don't want to be an influence on you. So now let's dig right in our reading for today. We are currently in section 2, which is entitled The Common Defense. Now we're in chapter 4, which is called The Department of Defense, and it's written by Christopher Miller. Chapter 4, Session 3. Let's dig right in, right where we left off. Our next subheading, U.S. Army. The U.S. Army's mission is to deploy, fight, and win our nation's wars by providing ready, prompt, and sustained land dominance by Army forces across the full spectrum of conflict as a part of the joint force. Today, however, the Army cannot execute its land dominance mission. The U.S. Army is at an inflection point that is marked by more than a decade of steadily eroding budgets and diluted buying power, an appreciable degradation in readiness and training capacity, a near crisis in recruiting and retention of critical personnel, and a bevy of aging weapon systems that no longer provide a qualitative edge over peer and near peer competitors, but will not be replaced in the near term. All of these challenges are set against the backdrop of a complex and dynamic global geopolitical environment that is exemplified and exacerbated by the triumph of our adversaries in Afghanistan after a 20-year struggle there, as well as recent Russian outrages in the Ukraine and China's velocity, both on its borders and in surrounding disputed regions. In spite of these ever-increasing operational pulls, our Army is consistently being asked to do more with fewer resources. The status quo is further marked by pervasive, politically driven top-down focus on progressive social policies that emphasize matters like so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion, and climate change, often to the detriment of the Army's core warfighting mission. Needed reforms. Bullet 1, rebuild the Army. The total Army budget has decreased by roughly 11% since 2018, perilously affecting services' readiness and ability to train and to procure new personnel and equipment. Declining budgets and decreased buying power have forced the Army to lower training standards and opportunities to train, propose reductions in end strength, slash military construction programs to historically low levels, and scale back essential modernization programs. Number 1, increase the Army budget to remain the world's preeminent land power. Number 2, accelerate the development and procurement of the 6 current Army modernization priorities: long-range precision fires, the next generation combat vehicle, future vertical lift, the Army network, air and missile defense, and soldier lethality. modernization priorities to replace worn out, outdated combat systems and ensure ground combat dominance. Number three, increase funding to improve Army training and operational readiness. Number four, increase the Army force structure by 50,000 to handle two major regional contingencies simultaneously. And number five, reform recruiting efforts. The Army missed its 2022 recruitment goal by 25% or 15,000 soldiers. The next bullet under needed reforms focus on deployability and sustained operations. The U.S. Army's very lethal ground force capability is irrelevant if it cannot quickly deploy to locations for employment in decisive operations to secure our global security interest. Additionally, Army logisticians provide the ground transportation of both personnel and equipment, food, fuel and water, munitions, bombs and bullets, medical supplies and services, and veterinary services, food safety, that are critical to the sustainment of the other services. Number one, immediately increase the production and stockpiling of critical munitions and repair parts. Number two, prioritize expeditionary logistics in all force design and operational planning to guarantee entry into a contested theater of war. Number three, increase the level of joint force training, synchronization, and coordination focused on logistics. Number four, prepare to deploy forces from degraded U.S.-based transportation infrastructure that is compromised by opposing forces. The next bullet under needed reforms, transform Army culture and training. The Army can no longer serve as the nation's social testing ground. A rebuilt Army that is focused again on its core warfighting mission and empowered it with the tools, resources, and authorities it needs to accomplish that mission must be the next administration's highest defense priority. Number one, stop using the Army as a test bed for social evolution. Misusing the Army in this way detracts from its core purpose while doing little to reshape the American social structure. The Army no longer reflects national demographics to the degree that it did before 1974, when the draft was eliminated. Number two, demand accountability in senior leaders to reverse the decline in public support for military service. Number three, reestablish the experimental base for the planning, execution, and leadership of Army formations in large-scale operations. Currently, there are no general or field grade officers who served as planners or commanders against a near peer adversary in combat. Number four, examine the logic of emerging Army concepts about employing massed long-range fires and effects without considering how to gain advantage by closing with and dominating an adversary on land. Number five, recognize that high-intensity land combat operations cannot be sustained through short-term individual or unit rotations in the style of the sustained low-intensity campaigns conducted over the past 20 years. Number six, transform how the National Guard is employed during extended operations short of declared war to preclude back-to-back federal and state deployments of National Guard soldiers in order to stabilize and preserve military volunteerism in our communities. Number seven, revamp Army school curricula to concentrate on preparation for large-scale land operations that focus on defeating a peer threat. And number 8, address the underlying causal issues driving increasing Army suicide rates, which have surpassed pre-World War II rates and are now eclipsing the rate among civilians. Our next subheading, U.S. Navy. As noted at the beginning of this chapter, the U.S. Constitution gives Congress the power to provide and maintain a Navy. Inherent in this phrase is a recognition that there is a vital national interest in the maritime environment, that this national interest requires sustained planning and investment. This is as true today as it was almost 250 years ago and will remain true into the future. The U.S. Navy, USN, exists for 2 primary reasons: to project prompt, sustained, and effective combat power globally, both at sea and ashore, and to deter aggression by potential adversaries by maintaining a forward operating presence in conjunction with allies and partners. Today, the People's Republic of China People's Liberation Army Navy, PLAN, can challenge the USN's ability to accomplish its mission in the Pacific and Indian Oceans. In the production, employment, and control of maritime forces, the USN must consider the scope and rate of technological change and, where appropriate, adapt its processes and workforce development in balancing the necessary long-term industrial model of naval platforms against emerging short-term opportunities. The USN must take account of advances that may present vulnerabilities and risk, as well as what is assured and secure. The needed reforms. Our first bullet under needed reforms: invest in and expand force structure. The USN's organizing principle remains platform-centered, vessels manned by sailors. Manned surface and subsurface forces act in concert with land-based, air-based, and space-based forces to project power outside sovereign territory, principally by operating in international waters. Investments must be closely coordinated with these other elements of military power. 1, build a fleet of more than 355 ships. Number 2, develop and field unmanned systems to augment the manned forces. And number 3, require that range and lethality be the key factors in all procurement and sustainment decisions for ships, aircraft, and munitions. The next bullet under needed reforms: reestablish the General Board. In contrast with the Navy General Board that served ship development so well during the interwar period, the current joint process for defining the requirements for major defense acquisitions is not well suited to long-term planning of the sort that is needed for USN fleet architecture and shipbuilding. The Interwar General Board should serve as a model, empowered with final decision authority over all requirements, documents concerning ships and major defense systems fielded on ships. The individual board members would ensure a broad base of knowledge as well as independent thinking. Next bullet under needed reforms: reestablish a Rapid Capabilities Office. The USN must transition technology into warfighting capability more rapidly. It must foster a culture of innovation that includes connecting theoretical and intangible ideas with real production environments that produce tangible and practical outcomes, and adapting proven processes to advance material solutions. Number one, harness innovation and willingness to tolerate risk so that good enough systems can be fielded rapidly. Number two, use the Space Development Agency as a model. Number three, establish an oversight board of directors made up of the service chief, service secretary, and undersecretary of defense for acquisition and sustainment. The next bullet under needed reforms. Accelerate the purchase of key munitions. It takes years to build and maintain navies, but only hours to expend their ordnance in combat. The USN must be prepared to expend large quantities of air-launched and sea-launched stealthily precision cruise missiles against targets both at sea and ashore. Additionally, modern air defense requires the use of high-performance surface-to-air missiles. Number one, produce key munitions at the maximum rate with significant capacity. And number two, working with the Congress, employ the widest possible range of techniques to enhance the munitions supply chains and workforce. Next bullet under needed reforms. Enhance warfighter development. The USN requires a variety of documented qualifications for personnel to advance in their careers and assume leadership positions. It also requires individual professional qualifications that are focused on warfighting. Number one, mandate qualifications that demonstrate an understanding of core competence in collective integrated warfighting, especially based on current plans and technologies. Number two, elevate the headquarters staff focused on warfighter development in 7 within the Office of the Chief of Naval Operations, OPNAV, and empower it to develop such requirements. Number three, require that war games be utilized as experiential learning environments for the participants as a prerequisite for achieving career milestones. Department heads, commanding officers, and major commanders. Number four, highlight in training and leader development that USN forces can and must maintain the ability to operate from and or defend sovereign territory to include our allies and partners. And number five, train to balance effects from kinetic to non-kinetic and from lethal to non-lethal through effective command and control. Our next subheading, U.S. Air Force. The U.S. Air Force today lacks a force structure with the lethality, survivability, and capacity to fight a major conflict with a great power like China, deter nuclear threats, and meet its other operational requirements under the National Defense Strategy. For 30 years, the Air Force has received less annual funding, if pass-through funding defined as money in the Air Force budget that does not go to the Air Force is removed from the equation, than the Army and Navy have received. This underfunding has forced the Air Force to cut its forces and forego modernizing aging weapon systems that were never designed to operate in current threat environments and are structurally and mechanically exhausted. The result is an Air Force that is the oldest, smallest, and least ready in history. Decline in Air Force capacity and capability is occurring at the same time the security environment demands the very options that the Air Force uniquely provides. Combatant commanders routinely request more Air Force capabilities than the service has the capacity to provide. The Air Force today simply cannot accomplish all of the missions it is required to perform. The Air Force has consistently stated on the official record that it is not sized to meet the mission demands placed on it by the various U.S. combatant commands. A 2018 study, The Air Force We Need, showed a 24% deficit in Air Force capacity to meet the needs of the National Defense Strategy. Those conclusions remain valid and are more pronounced today because of subsequent aircraft retirements. The demand is also higher because of world events. To understand these trends, one needs only to consider that the Air Force's future 5-year budget plan retires 1,463 aircraft while buying just 467. This makes for a reduction of 996 aircraft by 2027. The net result is a force that is smaller, older, and less ready at a time when demand is burgeoning. Needed reforms. Bullet 1. Increase spending and budget accuracy in line with a threat-based strategy. Returning the U.S. military to a force that can achieve deterrence or win in a fight if necessary requires returning to a threat-based defense strategy. Real budget growth combined with a more equitable distribution of resources across the armed services is the only realistic way to create a modernized Air Force with the capacity to meet the needs of the National Defense Strategy. Additionally, as noted above, pass-through funding causes numbers cited in current DoD budget documents to be higher than the dollar amounts actually received by the Air Force. Number 1, adopt a 2 workforce defense strategy with scenarios for each service that will allow the Air Force to attain the resources it requires by developing a force sizing construct that reflects what is required to accomplish strategic objectives. Number 2, eliminate pass-through funding, which has grown to more than $40 billion per year and has caused the Air Force to be chronically underfunded for decades. And number 3, increase the Air Force budget by 5% annually after adjusting for inflation to reverse the decline in size, age, and readiness and facilitate the transition to a more modern, lethal, and survivable force. The next bullet under needed reforms. Reduce near-term and mid-term risk. Increasing the Air Force's acquisition of next-generation capabilities that either are or soon will be in production will increase the ability of the United States to deter or defeat near-term to mid-term threats. Number 1, increase F-35A procurement to 60 to 80 per year. Number 2, build the capacity for a B-21 production rate of 15 to 18 aircraft per year, along with applicable elements of the B-21 long-range strike family of systems. Number 3, increase Air Force airlift and aerial refueling capacity to support agile combat employment operations that generate combat sorties from a highly dispersed posture in both Europe and the Pacific. Number 4, develop and buy larger quantities of advanced mid-range weapons, 50 nm to 200 nm, that are sized to maximize targets per sortie for stealth aircraft flying in contested environments against target sets that could exceed 100,000 aim points. Number 5, accelerate the development and production of the Sentinel intercontinental ballistic missile to reduce the risk inherent in an aging Minuteman III force in light of China's nuclear modernization breakout. And number 6, increase the number of EC-37B electronic warfare aircraft from 10 to 20 in order to achieve a minimum capacity to engage growing threats from China across the electromagnetic spectrum. The next bullet under needed reforms: invest in future Air Force programs and efforts. Increasingly capable adversaries require new capabilities to enable victory against those adversaries. Number 1, attain an operationally optimized advanced battle management system as the Air Force element of the DoD Joint All-Domain Command and Control expertise. Number 2, produce the next generation air dominance system of systems, air moving target indication, other sensors, communications, command and control, weapons, and uninhabited aerial vehicles. Number 3, achieve moving target engagement capability and capacity against sea, surface, and ground mobile targets at the scale necessary to meet the needs of the National Defense Strategy. Number 4, build resilient basing, sustainment, and communications for survivability in a contested environment. And number 5, establish a vigorous and sufficiently funded electromagnet spectrum operations recovery plan to make up for the more than 20 years of neglect of this mission area. In our next subheading, U.S. Marine Corps. The U.S. Marine Corps is the maritime land force of the Department of Defense and Department of the Navy. It serves a critical role as an expeditionary amphibious force that can project power from sea to shore and beyond while performing other specialized missions like securing America's diplomatic outpost abroad. Between the terrorist attacks of September 11, 2001, and the conclusion of U.S. military operations in Afghanistan in August 2022, the Marine Corps engaged in extended operations ashore as directed by the Secretary of Defense, leaving it with little opportunity or ability to train for and execute the naval and amphibious operations for which it is uniquely suited and directed by law. This lengthy divergence from its primary mission led to deep concern that the Corps had become a second land army, prompting senior Marine Corps officers to push for the service to return to the sea. In addition, the USMC spent nearly 2 decades fighting counterinsurgency wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and developed capabilities that were specifically geared to those fights, but have limited utility in scenarios involving evenly matched and advanced enemies or amphibious operations that are necessary for the projection of a naval power. As a result, the Marine Corps Commandant General David H. Berger developed and began to implement Force Design 2030, a plan that, if completed, would be the most radical transformation of the Marine Corps since World War II. The successful implementation of this force redesign, coupled with reforms in the Marine Corps' personnel system and the Navy's amphibious shipbuilding plans, will be critical to ensuring the Corps' future combat effectiveness. Needed reforms. First bullet, divest systems to implement the Force Design 2030 transformation. Divesting equipment that is less relevant to distributed, low-signature operations in a contested maritime environment will make funds available for modernization. Number 1, transform USMC force structure. A, eliminate all USMC law enforcement battalions. B, transform at least one Marine Infantry Regiment into a Marine Littoral Regiment. Number C, reduce the size of remaining infantry battalions. Number 2, divest systems or equipment that are better suited to heavier U.S. Army units. A, maintain divestments of M1 Abrams tanks. B, eliminate the majority of tube artillery M777 batteries. And number 3, reduce the number of advanced amphibious assault vehicles and the number of their replacements. Number 3, use funds made available by divestment of systems to support new systems that are geared to the likely needs of future conflicts. A, increase the number of rocket artillery batteries, HIMARS. B, increase the number of upgraded light armored vehicle companies, LAV. C, increase the number of unmanned aerial systems and anti-air systems, including counter-UAS systems. D, develop long-range strike missiles and anti-ship missiles for the Corps. And E, modernize USMC infantry equipment. The next bullet, transform the USMC personnel paradigm. More than other services, the USMC relies heavily on junior non-commissioned officers, NOCs, to staff key positions across the force, but especially in combat arms. For example, E4s routinely hold squad leader billets when the Army normally has E6s in those billets. The nature of more distributed operations and the increasingly complex responsibilities of a Marine Corps rifle squad and platoon under Force Design 2030 will not only put more responsibility on the backs of squad leaders and platoon sergeants, increasing the need for more senior Marines in those critical positions. Additionally, the Corps needs to improve its retention of junior NCOs after their first enlistments. The Marines have much lower rates of re-enlistment than other branches. Number 1, align the USMC's combat arms rank structure with the U.S. Army's. Squad leader billets are for E6s and platoon sergeant billets are for E7s. Number 2, create better incentives to retain talented junior NCOs, especially in infantry and other critical military occupational specialties. And number 3, reduce unnecessary deployments to increase dwell time in order to enable more robust primary military education. The next bullet under needed reforms, align Navy amphibious shipbuilding with Force Design 2030. The U.S. Navy has struggled for decades to maintain an amphibious fleet that could support USMC war plans around large-scale amphibious operations. In addition, amphibious shipbuilding has often had to compete against other priorities within a constrained budget and limited shipbuilding capacity. Number 1, develop and produce light amphibious warships, LAWs, to support more distributed amphibious operations, especially in the Pacific. Number 2, maintain between 28 and 31 larger amphibious warships, as opposed to the 25 specified in current Navy shipbuilding plans and the 38 specified before 2020. In our next bullet, U.S. Space Force. U.S. Space Forces conduct global space operations to sustain and enhance air, land, and sea effectiveness, lethality, and superiority by providing secure broadband global communications, precision position, navigation, and timing accuracy, attack warning and threat tracking and targeting capability, real-time intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance information, and their assured continuity of operations, both by defending U.S. assets and by conducting offensive operations that are capable of imposing unacceptable losses on adversaries that might seek to attack them. The U.S. Space Force, USSF, was established to assure continuous global and theater combat support from space to deter attacks against U.S. space assets and to prevail in space should deterrence fail. The USSF posture was conceived as a balance of offensive and defensive deterrent capabilities designed for maximum effectiveness. Needed reforms. First bullet, reverse the Biden administration's defensive posture. The Biden administration has eliminated almost all offensive deterrence capabilities and instead will rely solely on defensive capabilities of disaggregation, maneuver, and reconstitution, the most costly, the slowest, and ultimately the most fragile architecture selection. Number 1, reestablish offensive capabilities to guarantee a favorable balance of forces, efficiently manage the full deterrent spectrum, and seriously complicate enemy calculations of a successful first strike against U.S. space assets. Number 2, restore architectural balance in U.S. Space Forces, both offensive and defensive, to restore deterrence dominance efficiently and quickly. Number 3, rapidly expand space control capability to include cislunar space, the region beginning at geosynchronous altitude and encompassing the moon, to provide early warning of an enemy attack. And number 4, seek arms control and rules of the road understandings only when they are unambiguously in the interest of the U.S. and its allies and prohibit their unilateral implementation. Our next bullet under needed reforms, implement policies suited to a mature USSF. No longer a newborn, the USSF has entered its 4th year of existence, and the lessons learned can be incorporated across all facets of the force to increase its effectiveness. Number 1, restructure from the current unity of effort structure to unity of command. Number 2, lead the U.S. government's development of a clear and unambiguous declaratory policy that the United States will operate at will in space and enforce these operations with capabilities that ensure effective deterrence and the ability to impose our will if necessary. Number 3, in the current study phase of concept development and issue necessary guidance for the development and fielding of offensive capabilities. Number 4, alter the Space Development Agency's current fail early approach and transition to a methodology that maintains aggressive timelines, but with significantly greater engineering rigor, with special attention to sustainment, support, and fully integrated space operations. Number 5, decrease the number of general officer positions to ensure the Space Force's ability to compete for resources on a common basis with the other services. And number 6, explore creation of a Space Force Academy to attract top aeroastro students, engineers, and scientists and develop astronauts. The Academy could be attached initially to a large existing research university like the California Institute of Technology or MIT, share faculty and funding, and eventually be built separately to be on par with the other service academies. Our next subheading, U.S. Cyber Command. U.S. Cybercom was established in 2010 by the Department of Defense to unify the direction of cyberspace operations, strengthen DoD cyberspace capabilities, and integrate and enhance U.S. cyber expertise. Cyber capabilities and threats are evolving rapidly. Accordingly, a conservative administration should be especially sensitive to and prepared to meet the challenges presented by bureaucratic silos, inappropriately rigid tactical doctrine, and strategic thinking's historic tendency to lag behind technological capability. The preliminary evidence from the war in Ukraine suggests that existing cyber doctrine and certain capability and target assumptions may be incorrect or misplaced. The following recommendations, therefore, presuppose that there will be a rigorous lesson learned analysis and review of existing U.S. doctrine in light of the battlefield evidence. Needed reforms. Bullet 1, ensure that U.S. Cybercom is properly focused. Mission creep is leading to wasteful overlap in the Department of Homeland Security, National Security Agency, Department of Defense, and Central Intelligence Agency. Number 1, separate U.S. Cybercom from the National Security Agency per congressional direction. Number 2, conduct effective offensive cyber effects operations at the tactical and strategic levels. Number 3, expand defensive cyber effects operations authorized by President Trump's classified National Security Presidential Memorandum 13, United States Cyber Operations Policy. And number 4, end Cybercom's participation in federal efforts to fortify U.S. elections to eliminate the perception that DoD is engaging in partisan politics. The next bullet under needed reforms, increase U.S. Cybercom's effectiveness. Number 1, accelerate the integration of cyber and electronic warfare, EW, doctrine and capabilities, abiding by the time-tested norms of combined arms warfare. Number 2, mandate that development teams will include both coders and soldiers, aircrew, and sailors with kinetic experience at the platoon level. Number 3, break the paradigm of cyber authorities held at the strategic level. Number 4, increase cyber resilience by, for example, protecting the Nuclear Command, Control, and Communications Network and the Air Force's Cyber Resiliency Office for Weapons Systems, CROWS. Number 5, expand coordination of joint operations with allies. And number 6, implement the Government Accountability Office's recommendation that the DoD Chief Information Officer, Commander of Cybercom, and Commander of Joint Force Headquarters, DoD Information Network, align policy and system requirements to enable DoD to have enterprise-wide visibility of cyber incident reporting to support tactical, strategic, and military strategies for response. The next bullet under needed reforms: rationalize strategy and doctrine. Update, number one, update the October 2022 National Security Strategy to define DoD roles and responsibilities beyond existing platitudes. Number two, apply traditional deterrent strategies and principles for using cyber EW in retaliation of foreign cyber attacks and/or EW actions against U.S. infrastructure and citizens. Our next subheading, Special Forces Operations. Even though America's conventional war in Afghanistan was a failure, Special Operations Forces of the United States Special Operation Command, USSOCOM, executed an extremely effective counterterrorism campaign. There has not been another major attack on the homeland. Global terrorist threats are reduced and managed. Collaboration with international partners is effective, and units under USSOCOM are the most capable and experienced warfighters in 2 generations. There is a movement to reduce the scope and scale of USSOCOM's mission in favor of other service priorities in great power competition. This would be a mistake because USSOCOM can be employed effectively with great power competition. It makes sense to capitalize on USSOCOM's experience and repurpose its mission to include irregular warfare within the context of great power competition, thereby providing a robust organization that is capable of achieving strategic effects that are critical to both our national defense and to the defense of our allies and partners around the globe. Irregular warfare should be used proactively to prevent state and non-state actors from negatively affecting U.S. policies and objectives while simultaneously strengthening our regional partnerships. If we maintain irregular warfare's traditional focus on non-state actors, we limit ourselves to addressing only the symptoms, non-state actors, not the problems themselves: China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Needed reforms. First bullet, make irregular warfare a cornerstone of security strategy. The U.S. can project strength through unified action with our interagency allies and partners by utilizing irregular warfare capabilities synchronized with elements of national power. Broadly redefining irregular warfare to address current state and non-state actors is critical to countering irregular threats that range from the Chinese use of economic warfare to Russian disinformation and Islamist terrorism. A broad definition of irregular warfare in the national security strategy would allow for a whole-of-government approach, thereby providing resources and capabilities to counter threats and ultimately serve as credible deterrents at the strategic and tactical levels. Number one, define irregular warfare as a means by which the United States uses all elements of national power to project influence abroad to counter state adversaries, defeat hostile non-state actors, deter wider conflict, and maintain peace in great power competition. Number 2, characterize the state and non-state irregular threats facing the U.S. by region in the national security strategy. Number 3, direct that irregular warfare resources, capabilities, and strategies be incorporated directly into the overall national defense strategy instead of being relegated to a supporting document. And number 4, establish an irregular warfare center of excellence to help DoD train, equip, and organize to conduct irregular warfare as a core competency across the spectrum of competition, crisis, and conflict. The next bullet under needed reforms: counter China's Belt and Road Initiative, BRI, globally. DoD, in conjunction with the interagency, allies, and partner nations, must work proactively to counter China's BRI around the globe. Number 1, task USSOCOM and corresponding organizations in the Pentagon with conceptualizing, resourcing, and executing regionally based operations to counter the BRI with a focus on nations that are key to our energy policy, international supply chains, and our defense industrial base. Number 2, use regional and global information operations to highlight Chinese violations of exclusive economic zones, violations of human rights, and coercion along Chinese fault lines in Xinjiang Province, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, in addition to China's weaponization of sovereign debt. Number 3, directly counter Chinese economic power with all elements of national power in North America, Central America, and the Caribbean to maintain maritime freedom of movement and protect the digital infrastructure of nations in the region. The next bullet under needed reforms: establish credible deterrence through irregular warfare to protect the homeland. A whole-of-government approach and willingness to employ cyber, information, economic, and counter-terrorist irregular warfighting capabilities should be utilized to protect the homeland. Number 1, include the designation of USSOCOM as lead for the execution of irregular warfare against hostile state and non-state actors in the national defense strategy. Number 2, demonstrate a willingness to employ offensive cyber capabilities against adversaries who conduct cyber attacks against U.S. infrastructure, businesses, personnel, and governments. Number 3, employ a name and shame approach by making information regarding the names of entities that target democratic processes and international norms available in a transparent manner. Number 4, work with the interagency to employ economic warfare, lawfare, and diplomatic pressure against hostile state and non-state actors. Number 5, maintain the authorities necessary for an aggressive counterterrorism posture against threats to the homeland. Our next subheading: nuclear deterrence. Nuclear deterrence is one of the most critical elements of U.S. national security, as it forms a backstop to U.S. military forces. Every operational plan relies on the assumption that nuclear deterrence holds. Ever since the U.S. first acquired nuclear weapons, administrations of both parties have pursued a strategy designed to deter nuclear and non-nuclear attack, assure allies, and in the event of nuclear employment, restore deterrence at the lowest possible cost to the U.S. Today, however, America's ability to meet these goals is increasingly challenged by the growing nuclear threats imposed by our adversaries. Bullet, China is pursuing a strategic breakout of its nuclear forces, significantly shifting the nuclear balance and forcing the U.S. to learn how to deter two nuclear competitors, Russia and China, simultaneously for the first time in its history. Bullet, Russia is expanding its nuclear arsenal and using the threat of nuclear employment as a coercive tactic in its war on Ukraine. Bullet, North Korea is advancing its nuclear capabilities. And our last bullet, Iran is inching closer to nuclear capability. Meanwhile, all U.S. nuclear capabilities and the infrastructure on which they rely date from the Cold War and are in dire need of replacement. The next administration will need to focus on continuing the effort to modernize the nuclear triad while updating our strategy and capabilities to meet the challenges presented by a more threatening nuclear environment. Needed reforms. First bullet under needed reforms, prioritize nuclear modernization. All components of the nuclear triad are far beyond their intended lifetimes and will need to be replaced over the next decade. This effort is required for the U.S. to maintain its nuclear triad and will be the bare minimum needed to maintain U.S. strategic nuclear deterrence. Number one, accelerate the timelines of critical modernization programs, including the Sentinel missile, long-range standoff weapon, LRSO, Columbia-class ballistic missile submarine, B-21 bomber, and F-35 dual-capable aircraft. Number two, reject any congressional proposals that would further extend the service lives of U.S. capabilities such as the Minuteman III ICBM. And number three, ensure sufficient funding for Warhead Life Expansion Programs, LEP, including the B-61-12, the W-84, the W-87-1 mod, and W-88 Alt 370. The next bullet under needed reforms, develop the Sea-Launched Cruise Missile Nuclear, SLCMN. In 2018, the Trump administration proposed restoring the SLCMN to help fill a growing gap in U.S. non-strategic capabilities and improve deterrence against limited nuclear attack. The Biden administration canceled this program in its 2022 Nuclear Posture Review, NPR. The next president should support and accelerate funding for development of the SLCMN with the goal of deployment by the end of the decade. The next bullet under needed reforms, account for China's nuclear expansion. To ensure its ability to deter both Russia and the growing Chinese nuclear threat, the U.S. will need more than the bare minimum of nuclear modernization. President Biden's 2022 NPR described the problem, but proposed no recommendations to restore or maintain nuclear deterrence. Number one, consider procuring more modernized nuclear systems, such as the Sentinel missile or LRSO, than currently planned. Number two, improve the ability of the U.S. to utilize the triad's upload capacity in case of a crisis. Number three, review what capabilities in addition to the SLCMN, for example, non-strategic weapons or new warhead designs, are needed to deter the unique Chinese threat. The next bullet, under needed reforms, restore the nuclear infrastructure. The United States must restore its necessary nuclear infrastructure so that it is capable of producing and maintaining nuclear weapons. Number one, accelerate the effort to restore plutonium pit production, which is essential for both modern warhead programs and for recapitalizing the stockpile. Number two, continue to invest in rebuilding infrastructure, including facilities at the national laboratories that support nuclear weapons development. And number three, restore readiness to test nuclear weapons at the Nevada National Security Site to ensure the ability of the U.S. to respond quickly to asymmetric technology surprises. In the next bullet, under needed reforms, correctly orient arms control. The U.S. should agree to arms control agreements only if they help to advance the interest of the U.S. and its allies. Number one, reject proposals for nuclear disarmament that are contrary to the goal of bolstering deterrence. Number two, pursue arms control as a way to secure the national security interest of the U.S. and its allies rather than an end in itself. And number three, prepare to compete in order to secure U.S. interest should arms control efforts continue to fail. And our last subheading for Chapter 4, Missile Defense. Missile defense is a critical component of the U.S. national security architecture. It can help to deter attack by instilling doubt that an attack will work as intended, take adversary cheap shots off the table, and limit the perceived value of missiles as a tool of coercion. It also allows space for diplomacy during a crisis and can protect U.S. and allied forces, critical assets, and populations if deterrence fails. Adversaries are relying increasingly on missiles to achieve their aims. Bullet, China and Russia, in addition to their vast and growing ballistic missile inventories, are deploying new hypersonic glide vehicles and investing in new ground-launched, air-launched, and sea-launched cruise missiles that uniquely challenge the United States in different domains. Bullet, North Korea has pursued an aggressive missile testing program and is becoming increasingly belligerent toward South Korea and Japan. Bullet, Iran continues to maintain a missile arsenal that is capable of striking U.S. and allied assets in the Middle East and Europe, and its rocket launches demonstrate that it either has or is developing the ability to build ICBMs. Missile defense has been under-prioritized and underfunded in recent years. In light of these growing threats, the incoming administration should treat missile defense as a top priority. Needed reforms. For first bullet, champion the benefits of missile defense. Despite its deterrence and damage limitation benefits, opponents argue incorrectly that U.S. missile defense is destabilizing because it threatens Russian and Chinese second strike capabilities. Number one, reject claims made by the left that missile defense is destabilizing while acknowledging that Russia and China are developing their own missile defense systems. Number two, commit to keeping homeland missile defense off the table in any arms control negotiations with Russia and China. The next bullet, under needed reforms, strengthen homeland ballistic missile defense. The United States currently deploys 44 ground-based interceptors, GBI, as a part of its ground-based mid-course defense, GMD, system to defend the homeland against North Korea. But as North Korea improves its missile program, this system is at risk of falling behind the threat. Number one, buy at least 64 of the next generation interceptor, NGI, which is more advanced than the GBI, for an eventual uniform fleet of interceptors. The Biden administration currently plans to buy only 20. Number two, consider additional steps to strengthen the GMD system, such as a layered missile defense or a third interceptor site on the East Coast. And our next bullet, under needed reforms, increase the development of regional missile defense. As the Ukraine conflict amply demonstrates, U.S. regional missile defense capabilities are very limited. The United States has been unable to supply our partners reliably with capabilities, and the number and types of regional missile defense platforms are less than the U.S. needs for its own defense. The U.S. should prioritize procurement of more regional defense systems, such as Theater High Altitude Area Defense, THAAD, Standard Missile 3, and Patriot missiles. The next bullet, under needed reforms, change U.S. missile defense policy. Historically, the U.S. has chosen to rely on deterrence to address the Russian and Chinese ballistic missile threat to homeland, and to use homeland missile defense only against rogue nations. Number one, abandon the existing policy of not defending the homeland against Russian and Chinese ballistic missiles and focus on how to improve defense as the Russian and Chinese missile threats increase at an unprecedented rate. Number two, invest in future advanced missile defense technologies like directed energy or space-based missile defense that could defend against more numerous missile threats. In our next bullet, under needed reforms, invest in new tracked and intercept capabilities. The advent of hypersonic missiles and increased numbers of cruise missile arsenals by threat actors poses new challenges to our missile defense capabilities. Number one, invest in cruise missile defense of the homeland. Number two, accelerate the program to deploy space-based sensors that can detect and track missiles flying on non-ballistic trajectories. Number three, accelerate the glide phase interceptor, which is intended to counter hypersonic weapons. We have finished there, not a whole section, but we have finished chapter 4, the Department of Defense. So I look forward to getting together with you next time as we continue in section 2, but we get right into chapter 5, which is the Department of Homeland Security. Thank you for hanging in there with me as we completed chapter 4. And just a reminder, my people are destroyed because of a lack of knowledge. So today and every day, get some knowledge.